I mean, basically the same thing, right? Okay, here we go. Now let's do this again. So what am I thinking? Okay. Okay, cool. Here we go. 4.7, completing the square. Okay, this is what you know how to do. If you have negative 5 times n minus 3 squared equals 10. Whoops. Sorry, this word's like ran into the parentheses. Alright, what would you do to solve this? Divide by negative 5, so you would get n minus 3 squared equals negative 2. Then you would take the square root of both sides. So n minus 3 would equal plus or minus square root 2i. And then we would add 3 to both sides, so n equals 3 plus or minus root 2i. This is what you already know how to do. I told you this is going to go fast, so pay attention. Keep up. Yes. This is 4.5 or 4.6. No, this is 4.6, which you already know how to do, or I'm going to assume that you already know how to do, which may be a bad assumption. Go back and watch the 4.6 video. Okay, so this is what we know how to do, but if we're given something like x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 25, can we do the same process? Can we take the square root of something and get the answer? And not how it is right now, okay, because there's nothing, no single thing squared. Remember, before we would have like just x squared and no x, or we would have just a parenthesis squared with no other x in the problem. And this one we have these two x's here, so we have this issue. Now, this one is actually set up nicely because if we look at just the left-hand side and we factor, what are the factors of 16 that add to give you negative 8? Negative 4 and negative 4. Yeah, so just hang on a second, you'll see. Okay, if we have x minus 4 times x minus 4, we could also write that as x minus 4 squared equals 25. And now it's just like the form that we had in the previous problem for 4.6 that you're supposed to know how to do. Right? Yes. Do you see where we're going with this? We're trying to say, okay, let's start with a problem. Sure you would. Yeah. So if we can write a quadratic in this form where we have stuff squared, then we can solve by square roots. So we talked about solving by factoring. We've done that already. And we talked about solving by square roots if it's set up to solve by square roots. So now we're going to figure out, okay, how can we set it up to solve it by square roots every time? And that's what we're doing here. You kind of see where we're going. All right. So how do we solve this? Yeah, take the square root, so we get x minus 4 equals, what is the square root of 25? 5, so plus or minus 25.
Plus or minus 5?
Oh, yeah, that's what I said, y'all. Plus or minus 5. And then add 4. So x equals 5 plus 4 would be 9. Or x equals negative 5 plus 4, which would be negative 1. So x equals 9 or x equals negative 1. Yes, that solves the problem. How do you know for sure? How can you check your work? You can plug them back in and see if you get 25, right? If you plug in 9 here, we should get 25. Yes, ma'am. Well, if we were solving by factoring, you would have to do that. But since the goal of what we're doing is to solve by square roots, we need to get it to where something is squared and equals a number. Because that's how we've had it set up in the past. If you look at this one, that's how we had it set up. Does that make sense? So this is kind of just a different solving technique. If you're going to solve by factoring, you must make it equal to 0 first. Yes. Okay, now what happens if we have something that's not quite set up so nicely? So this one was set up great because it factored to x minus 4 squared. It factored to something squared. But you know, a lot of times it'll factor to, like, say, x minus 8x plus 5. And those aren't the same, right? Okay, so we have to somehow set it up. So process for completing the square. The first thing you're going to do is divide both sides by a. So if there is some a value, like if it's 2x squared or negative 1x squared, you have to divide by whatever the a is if it's not 1. And we'll go through an example, so this may seem like a lot, but it'll be okay. Okay, then we're going to move c to a side by itself. Then we're going to add b over 2 squared to each side. We factor and solve by square roots. Up here and refer back to. Okay, example. X squared minus 12x plus 4 equals 0. By the way, if you're going to solve this factoring, the factoring method, can you even factor it? What is the factors of 4 that add to give you negative 12? There's not any. So this one you can't solve by factoring. So you have to solve a different way, either using square roots, which is what we're about to do, or quadratic formula once we get to 4.8. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to do all these steps. So step 1 says divide both sides by a, but a is just 1, so we're actually done with step 1. Step 2 says move c to a side by itself. So c right now is 4. I need to move it to the other side. What do I do? Subtract it. So x squared minus 12x equals negative 4. I just subtracted 4 from both sides. Yes? Okay. Step 3 says add b over 2 squared to each side. So what is b? Negative 12. So negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. And negative 6 squared is 36. So I'm going to add that to both sides. X squared minus 12x plus 36 equals negative 4 plus 36. It's really important to do this to both sides. Someone tell me why. You have to. Why? To make it equal, right? If you just added 36 to one side, the problem isn't going to be the same. So to keep it equal, we have to add 36 to both sides. Okay. Step 4 says to factor. Now, we're going to factor this side. What are the factors of 36 that add to give you negative 12? Negative 6 and negative 6. So x minus 6 squared. Here's something that you need to like write, highlight, underline, something. It will always factor to x minus b over 2 squared. Always. And this will help you if you happen to get a fraction when you do b over 2. No, this is 3. Oh, yeah, sorry. Just kidding. This is 4. So on step 4, when you factor, you're always going to get x minus b over 2. So remember that we did b over 2 and then squared that to add to both sides. But it's always going to factor to x minus b over 2. Very good? Okay. Number 5 says solve by, we didn't do the right side. So equals 32. And then step 5 is to solve by square root. So x minus 6 squared equals 32. We're going to take the square root of both sides. X minus 6 equals plus or minus root 32. How do we get x by itself? Add 6. So x equals 6 plus or minus root 32. Can you reduce root 32? Probably. So 32 is what? Or 2 factors? Huh? 16 and 2, and 16 is 4 and 4. 2, 2, 2, 2. So I have 5 2's. What is that going to work out to be? 4 square root 2. Y'all are getting good at this. Do what? Hold on a second. Yes. Because we needed to, basically, the point of adding that b over 2 squared to both sides is you're actually making this side a perfect square. You're causing this to become just one thing squared. So in order to do that, you have to take b over 2 and square it in order to complete the square. So you'll get a perfect square. A perfect square trinomial. Are you ready to try another one? Are you good, Sabrina? X squared minus 6x minus 3 equals 0. The first step is to divide both sides by a, and then we actually don't have an a, so we're good. Well, we do have an a, but it's 1. Okay, 2 says move c to a side by itself. How are we going to do that? Add 3 to both sides. So we get x squared minus 6x equals 3. Now, the third step is actually completing the square. So the third step says, what is half of b? Negative 6 over 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. X squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 3 plus 9. The fourth step is factor. X squared minus 6x plus 9, what are the factors of 9 to add to give you negative 6? Negative 3 and 3, negative 3 and negative 3, sorry. So negative 3 squared equals 12. And now we're going to take the square root. Which gives us x minus 3 equals plus or minus root 12. Add 3. X equals 3 plus or minus root 12. Can we reduce root 12? Yes. What are the factors of 12? 4 and 3, 2 and 2, so the 2's are what we can pull out. So we have 3 plus or minus 2 root 3. Everything is coming together, isn't it? Yes, it is. Do you feel better about completing the square? Yes, we can. Let's see, I don't know if this example has a decimal, but we'll try it, and if not, we'll find one that does. Okay, so last example, or maybe not. 4x squared minus 40x minus 12 equals 0. And this one isn't, so we'll do one after this one. Actually, let's just change this to, change it to 12. And this will work out. So 4x squared minus 12x minus 12 equals 0. Okay, the first step is to divide everything by a. What's a? 4. So if we divide everything by 4 on both sides, we would get x squared minus 3x minus 3 equals 0. So it's really important that if you have an a, that you divide everything by a. Okay, step 2 says to move c to the other side. So I have x squared minus 3x equals 3. You add 3 to both sides to get it on the side by itself. Step 3 is the completing the square step. So we take half of b, okay, so negative 3 over 2, and that's just negative 3 over 2, or negative 1.5 if you like that better. What is negative 1.5 squared? You can use your calculator. Someone tell me what it is. Jack, do you have your calculator? What is negative 1.5 squared? Okay, and this is actually going to be positive 2.25 because we square the negative also. So negative 1.5 times negative 1.5 is going to give us the positive 2.25. Okay, so this is what we're going to add to both sides. We have x squared minus 3x plus 2.25 equals, and you know what? I don't want to put it in decimal form. If we have negative 3 over 2 squared, that's going to give us 9 over 4. You see that? Could you just multiply negative 3 over 2 times negative 3 over 2? This is squaring. So I don't want to do decimals because the back of the book isn't going to have any decimal form. So negative 3 over 2 is our negative b over 2. And then we want to square that, which gives us 9 over 4. Everyone see that? Okay, so here, to do this again, x squared minus 3x plus 9 over 4 equals 3 plus 9 over 4. Okay, on the left side, how do we factor this? So this is where it's important to remember where we drew the asterisk or highlighter or underline or whatever we did. This is where that's important because what is this going to factor to? X minus 3 over 2 squared. It's always x minus b over 2. Equals. Now, how do we write this as one fraction? I'm sorry, what? It's 5. Okay, so it is 5 1/4, but how do we write that as just a single fraction? Okay, so if we multiply 4 over 4 on this side, we can have common denominator. So that gives us 12 over 4 plus 9 over 4, which is 21 over 4. Everyone see how we did that? Okay, now what's the next step? Okay, this was the factoring step. The next step is to solve by square root. So if we take the square root of both sides, then we're going to get x minus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus square root 21 over 4. Can we do anything with this square root 21 over 4? You could do square root 21 over the square root of 4, yes, and then what can we do? It would become the square root of 21 over 2. You can make the square roots, here we can actually just do this. You can split up the square roots. So remember by the properties, we learned way back in 4.5. So square root 21 over square root 4. And then the square root 4 reduces to 2. Okay, now what do we need to do? Something like that. Add 3 halves.
Please on this interruption. At this time, please dismiss the Earth and Space students for their future. Students are to report to the commons. Thank you.
Okay, so this is what we have. 3 halves plus or minus root 21 over 2. Or you could write this, and this is perfectly fine to leave it like that. Or you could write 3 plus or minus root 21 over 2. How can I put them both over 2? Okay, because they have the same denominator, and that's what we do when we add fractions, right? You add the numerator and just leave the denominator. Okay, so notice that this sort of looks like what you get when you do quadratic formula too, right? Yeah. Does that help with the decimal ones? Yeah. Okay, and I mean, you're going to have to practice this. I don't expect for right now you to be like a genius at completing the square. You're still going to have to practice. Go back over the homework problems that you didn't know how to do. Maybe if you did them already, go back and practice a couple more to help solidify the idea in your mind. Very good? Okay, let me stop this and we'll make a new video for that.